Hi everyone, welcome to Bello's Designs. My name is Catherine and today I'm going to show you how to create this adorable 3D Halloween card that I'm calling Hocus Pocus. This card lays flat at 5 by 7 and comes out of the envelope to stand up with an adorable scene and room on the back to add a greeting or a note to customize your card. Let's quickly talk about the things we'll need to get started. You will need one piece of 5 by 7 multifarious cardstock for your card base, one piece of 8 by 2 inch multifarious cardstock, and this will be the front of our card. And then I have just a few pieces of offcuts and scraps from previous projects. We always say to save those. Today I'm going to show you what you can do with them. You're also going to want to have a paper trimmer or scoring board to score your card. I have my Lavinia acetate hill masks, so we'll be using that to create the ground on our card today. For stamps, I will be using the Hattie, which is LAV 914, the Lavinia moon stamp, LAV 431, the Ickle Pumpkins, LAV 828, the Flower Pods, which are LAV 730, Hill House, LAV 908. Then I also have Mini Jinx and Mini Rune, which are LAV 917 and LAV 915. And then I'll also be using Willow the Witch, LAV 194. Now I won't be using the witch from this set. I'll actually be using the cauldron. If you have the cauldron from the newest Witching Hour release from Lavinia Stamps, that will work just fine. I did not order that because I knew I already had a cauldron. Here are a few other supplies we'll need to get started. I'll be using my Micron pen to draw in some grass at the bottom of my card. We'll also be using our Uniball Signo glitter pen in silver to outline my moon. I have a variety of Sweet Poppy watercolor brush pens. I have 3 shades of orange and a green to color in my pumpkins. And then I'll be using a fan brush for my background. I'll also be using a variety of my blending brushes. I have lime green stickles for the magic in my cauldron and a few ink pads. I'll be using the Lisa Horton Cloud9 ink in Anthracite, Versafine Clair in Nocturn, Versafine Clair in Warm Breeze, and Versafine Clair in Morning Mist. And finally, I will be using a couple of Elements ink pads. I'm going to use the Lime Punch and the Blue Atoll. The first step in creating this card is to stamp the moon. So I'm going to ink that up in the Morning Mist by Versafine Clair. And I'm going to stamp it up towards the left corner. I want to avoid stamping in the center of the card because at the end we're going to come back and put a score line there. So I wouldn't want this score line to be going through my moon. So this looks like a good spot. I'm going to put it down right there. Okay. When I was making this card, I did have a moon stencil already cut out using the Lavinia stencil sheet, so you're welcome to do that if you want, but I really want to see where the edge of the moon is, and so I've decided to just use the acetate from the back of that stencil on this project rather than peeling down the stencil and then pulling it back up. So I'm going to begin with the Lime Punch and just go around the outside of my moon with that. And not very much, just a little bit. It's kind of a bright card, but even though it's a night scene, it's a full moon, so everything's bright. So I'm gonna put that aside just so I don't put my hand down in it. And just add a little more green to the right side of the card. And this is going to be the hill that I'm gonna stamp my hill house on when I get to that. All right, so that's enough of the lime punch. Now I'm going to come back in with the blue Atoll, and I'm going to do the rest of the background in the blue for the back of the card. Okay, so I'll just start off the edge of the card to make sure I don't have any big blue splotches. And I'll just try to keep that clean. Go with like a little blue up here in this corner. Add a little here. All right, I have a little splotch there. I think I'm going to try to take that out with my green. See if we can blend that out a little bit more. And just remember, when we're making cards, sometimes we have little accidents and mistakes, and nobody notices they're there except for us, because we know we didn't intend them to be there. Around that corner. Okay, and that didn't blend out quite exactly like I had hoped it would, but I think it'll be fine. I'm going to leave it. All right, now I'm going to use my acetate hill mask, and I'm going to set this aside and bring in the 1x8 inch, I'm sorry, this is a 2x8 inch piece for the ground. So we'll start with the lime punch, and I'm going to just complete the background. I'm going to ink the whole thing with my blending brush in the lime punch. And then we'll use our anthracite to create the grass line. Now I'm drawn to bright, vivid, happy colors. I think it gives my cards a whimsical look. And like I said, it's a full moon, so I'm not going to worry very much about everything being super dark, because I like the light look. All right, that's probably enough for the lime punch. Now I'm going to come back with my anthracite ink, and this is the Lisa Horton Cloud 9. And I'm going to put my mask down just about, maybe a little more than halfway. And we're going to go over this with the anthracite, and this is a pretty new ink pad. It's fairly juicy, so I'm pretty confident I'm going to get a pretty dark grass line here, and that's what I'm looking for. All right, I'm pretty happy with how that turned out. I'm going to clean off my mask and just set it aside in case I need to come back to it later. I don't want to lay anything down on top of it and make a mess out of it. So at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring back the background and the piece that goes on the front of my card. And I want to add a little bit of splatter. I like the look of that. I think it's a fun Halloween background, and it gives the illusion of stars in the sky. So I'll just give it a little bit of splatter here. And I think I'd like to keep the grass from getting wet. So we'll just come add that here. All right. Now I'm going to use my paper towel just to lift the ink off. And be careful not to smudge it. It's bleached out nicely. Maybe I could add a little more here. All right. I'm going to set this aside and let it dry while we stamp and fussy cut the other elements of our card. The next step in my project is going to be to stamp and cut out my Ickle pumpkins, my flower pods, and Hattie the Witch. So for the pumpkins and the flower pods, I'm just going to use a regular stamp block and stamp them on some scrap paper. And I want at least 3 of these Ickle pumpkins, so we'll see what we can fit on here. And not worry if we can't fit both. Yeah. That'll work fine. So we have 2 jack-o'-lanterns and 1 little fairy house in there. I'm gonna clean that off, just so I don't have any unhappy accidents. And I'm going to take my flower pods and put them both on my stamp block. And these I'm going to stamp in the Warm Breeze. I just like the look of that blue on my background. And I also am going to want 3 of these. So I'll do this a couple of times. I think 1 of the taller ones and 2 of the little ones will do just fine, but we may end up with 2 sets here. Oh. That's all right, I don't need all of them. All right, so there we go. We have 3 lanterns and 3 jack-o'-lanterns ready to be fussy cut and then colored. Okay, I'm gonna put this away. Now with Hattie the Witch, I really want to get a nice stamped image. So I'm going to move my paper out of the way and come back in with my MISTI to stamp her, and just make sure that if we need to stamp her twice, that she's going to come out perfectly. So I'm just going to get my cardstock all ready inside of my stamp platform. And we'll put her down. Close the door to pick her up, and just ink her up in Nocturn. Now sometimes I find that I need to stamp my witches and fairies twice, and that's okay. That's what the MISTI's for. She came out pretty perfect. I don't think we even have to give her a second stamp. So we'll take her out Get her all cleaned up. I'm going to turn off the camera for a few minutes and fussy cut all these pieces, and then I'll be back to show you what comes next. So everything is cut out. I have cut out Hattie the Witch, and my ickle pumpkins, as well as my flower pods, which I'm going to turn into lanterns. So I'm going to start with the flower pods, and I have my 3 orange blending pens or blending brushes and my green. Now these look a little bright, but you'll notice as you blend them together that the tones and the colors will soften a little bit and darken up. So we're going to go ahead and get started with that. And the first thing I'm going to do is color in the lights on my lanterns. And that's all we're going to do with those for now. So I'm going to just put them aside. We'll work on Hattie after. And let's go ahead and get started with the pumpkins. So like I said, I like to do just a combination, and I go back and forth with these colors to color in my pumpkins. So the first thing I'm going to do is start with the green on the stems. And this one has a little leaf. And I'm going to color a little bit of green at the bottom of each of these. And we're going to blend those colors up. Okay, then I'm going to come in with my darkest orange and go over that. And I'm not being too picky with these. But they are fun little pumpkins. So I think we could do a little better there. And just again, as you blend, you'll see that the green will start to darken up a little bit. We can always come back in and make it a little brighter if we want to do that after. Okay. All right, now I'll come back with the medium orange. Just blend that out. I'm going to add a little bit to the green. There we go. Add the lighter yellow to the top of this one. Okay, pretty happy with how that turned out. Just blending those colors together. And maybe a little more of the dark orange down here. There we go. There are our pumpkins, and they are looking pretty spooky Halloween-y to me. As I'm completing my card, I want the lanterns and the pumpkins to blend into the background. So this is a good time to come back while our base is still drying and ink up the background on the pumpkins. Now, because the pumpkins are low to the ground, I'm only going to use the lime punch on those backgrounds. So just lightly ink them up so they'll blend in better. So there's one. Oops. And two. And here's the third one. And it just gets rid of that bright white on the background. Okay, let's do the same thing with the lanterns. However, with the lanterns, I'm going to do the bottom of the pole with the lime punch, and then I'll use the blue Atoll at the top so it blends into the background on my card. Okay, so we have that, and probably enough ink on the top. I don't even have to ink it up again. I can just use what's on my brush. Okay, and there we have those. Now, let's bring Hattie back with the base of our card, and it's going to line up about here. So I find that when I'm making this card, if I shade just below her hand down to the bottom, that's probably a pretty good starting spot. And then the rest we'll do in blue. So just like before, I'm going to do the bottom of Hattie in the lime punch. Let's see if that's a good color match. Maybe add a little bit more. All right, that's a pretty good match for the color. And now I'm going to move on to the blue Atoll. Just add a little bit extra to my brush and blend that to the top of her so she just blends into the background much better. Okay. Oh, pretty happy with that. Okay, this feels like it still is maybe a little bit damp, so I'm going to pull out my heat tool, dry that up quickly, and then come back to finish up stamping and assembling our card. Now that the background has had a chance to dry, I'm going to come back and finish the back of the card, and then we'll move on to the front. So with my silver Uniball gel pen, I'm just going to outline a little bit of the moon, and not too much. I like the look of just a little bit of silver around the outside. So I'm going to do it just around the gray parts of the moon. All right, there we have that. Now, in order to figure out where to place the house, I'm going to put my pop-out strip for the bottom down here just to get just to eyeball it and see where I'd like to put that, and I think that looks like a pretty good spot for it. So pretty sure that we can get that on target. And I'm going to ink up the Hill House with the Nocturn. And just, I only want to do this once, and I don't really want to bring back the MISTI. So I'm going to ink it up really well. And this looks like a good spot. Now I'm still keeping it away from the center so that when I score my card at the end, it won't be scored through the house. Okay. And if you wanted to, this would be a good time to come in and maybe add a little yellow to the windows and lighten them up a bit. Or bleach them out, whichever works for you. I'm going to add this dark yellow. And I like how that came out. So we'll leave that there. Okay, now I'm going to set this aside for now, and let's work on this piece. So when I assemble my card, I do want to remember that I'm going to need a 1/2 inch to fold over here. And just to get an idea of where we'd like to put the cauldron, I think I'm going to put it on top of this hill. So I'm going to come back in with my Versafine Clair and Nocturn. Just ink it up. And there we go. That's pretty, came out, happy with that. Okay. I lost my kittens. All right, I'm going to come back in with Mini Jinx and Mini Rune, and we'll stamp them in place. So bring my little ink block here. And I'm going to have them facing and looking at the cauldron. So we'll put this little guy here. And his partner in crime on the other side. There we are. And I'm going to put that right away so I don't lose it. The next step I'm going to work on is drawing some grass. And we don't need a lot of grass, but I just thought it added a nice little detail to the card. So I'm going to come back in with my fine tip pen and just add a little bit. Lots of this is going to get covered up with our pumpkins, but I'm just going to randomly put some in over here. Okay. So that's looking good. The next thing I'm going to do is bring back my paper trimmer. So I'm going to slide all of this out of the way, and it's time to score our card and start assembling. So I'll put this here so I can get it in the camera. I don't usually use it sideways, but for today's demonstration I will. And this is a 7-inch piece of cardstock. So I want to bring it, it's an 8-inch piece of cardstock, and I want to bring it down to 7 inches. So I'm going to score it at the 1/2 inch mark on each end. There's one. And here's the other. Now on the back of my card, we also have this is a 5 by 7 inch piece of cardstock. So we're going to score this at 3.5, so it's scored right down the middle, and that will help it to stand up when it's all finished. Okay. So there we go, and we're not going to fold it all the way. I just want to give it a little bit of a bend so that it stands up, but I still want it to lay flat in my envelope. Set that out of the way, and I like to use my bone folder just to burnish my edges, so I'll do that here. I'll do it on this side, and we're ready to start putting it all together. I'm going to use my Sweet Petunia glue press today. It doesn't take long for this glue to set up and dry, but if you prefer, you could use some double-sided tape. I think it got a little clogged. So the tip is nice because if you don't get it all the way down into your holder, like I just did, you just simply put the tip back in and pull it out again, and now it should work just fine. There we go. Perfect. All right. Set that back in there, and I'm just going to line up the bottom of my 2-inch piece to one side of my card. Fold it over, and we can attach the other side. A little glue on my fingers, so I'm going to be careful not to get that on my card. All right, there we go. So we'll give that a minute to set up. All right, it is time for the final steps of our card. So we're just going to assemble our fussy cut pieces and then add our stickles as the magic to our cauldron. Now, I did smudge this a little bit with my finger, but I'm not worried about it because I'm definitely covering that up with pumpkins and lanterns. And I'm going to place Hattie just in front of the house, but I still want to see the house when my card is standing up. So we're going to add the glue just to the bottom of her skirt. Make sure that she gets a nice stick on there. Okay. And I have one lantern that I'm going to put on this edge of my card, like so. Just add a drop of glue. And stick that down. Just hold it in place for a minute and let it set up. Okay, and then the others are going to go on this side, and I'm just going to quickly place them together. I think today I'm going to stack them like so. So we'll put the bigger lantern to the side. This one behind the other pumpkins. Put that one And we'll do our Echo pumpkins at the bottom. Got one. Got the second one. Oops. And this third one reminds me of a little fairy house, so I'm going to put that right on top for our fairies. Like so. And the last step is going to be to come in with our green stickles and just add lots of bubbly, glittery potion. Now this part takes a little bit of time to dry. So if you're going to make this card to give away, I'm going to recommend that you let it sit out overnight for all those lovely sparkly stickles to dry. And there we have it. There's our finished card. Here's our sample. I hope that you might give this a try, and I want to thank you for joining me today. If you're not already a member of our Facebook groups, please consider joining Del Bello's Designs Lounge, where you can share your projects featuring Lavinia Stamps products, or Del Bello's a la carte for all other stamp lines Del Bello's sells. Have a great week.